2.
Hey, happy Thirsty Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to The Sweat presented by DraftKings. I'm Emerson Lotzie. We're talking EPL best bets. We're talking which pricey players to roster on the ice. We're also going to discuss a first half of the NBA season betting recap, which teams to keep an eye on as the second half of the season will get going next week. Tonight, final night in the first half, 3 games on tap before the All-Star break. 2 dudes here to break it down from a DFS and betting perspective. DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne on the left will be covering the DFS side in this segment. RotoWire's Nick Whalen, Mustachio, will tackle the sportsbook side of this slate. So here we go, guys. Bucks visiting the Bulls as 7.5-point favorites. Chicago has actually won both meetings against Milwaukee this season. Who's your DFS play here, Gary? And let's not forget Drew Holiday coming off that 40-point outburst in an overtime win over against Boston.
Yeah, I'm looking a little farther down the pricing list at guard, though. I think Ayo Dosunmu continues to be in a very nice spot. I think we have to assume that DeMar DeRozan is not going to play in this game, even though we do not have an official injury report from Chicago as of yet. But obviously dealing with that grade 1 thigh strain, didn't play yesterday. Last game before the All-Star break, it just seems unlikely that DeRozan gets into this one. And if you look at Dosumu's game log from the last 3 games DeRozan has missed, he is averaging over 40 minutes per game because that's how the Bulls operate when they don't have DeMar DeRozan. He played 42.3 minutes in last night's loss to the Pacers. He's not going to blow you away with usage rate. He's not going to be someone who ends the game with 30 points. However, in those games, he's played an average of 40 minutes. He's been able to average just over 28 DraftKings points. He's $200 less expensive than he was even last night when he scored 28 DraftKings points on the nose. I just think Dosunmu is someone you can stick into a lineup and pretty comfortably assume he's going to bring back 6x or 7x value.
All right, what do you think here on the sportsbook side, Waylon? Now an 8-point spread, largest spread on this 3-game slate. Can't hear you, homie. I think you're muted. Try one more time, maybe on our end.
You got me? You got me?
Yeah, we got you. We got you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I think Garian's right about DeMar DeRozan. I would be pretty surprised if DeRozan plays here. Second night of a back-to-back before the All-Star break. I mean, Tibbs is not coaching the Bulls anymore. I don't think that would make a lot of sense. So with that in mind, I think it's a good spot for Milwaukee. And we saw the Bucks in a near letdown spot earlier this week against the Hospital Celtics. They still end up winning that game in overtime. Didn't cover. I think they get it done this time around. I'm more comfortable taking the Bucks -8 than I am the Bulls +8, if you just want to look at it simplistically like that. I'd be looking out if you could find a Chris Middleton points prop later in the day. I know it's not available now, but he's played really well of late, and I think this might be an opportunity for the Bucks to get him back in the starting lineup tonight because Pat Connaughton will not be available. And also with that in mind, Grayson Allen over 9.5 points. That's one of my favorite player props from this game.
Yeah, Bucks 5-0 ATS in their last 5 road games. Bulls 0-5 ATS in their last 5 games overall. Let's go to the next game on the board here. Waylon, I'll start with you. Timberwolves hosting the Wizards tonight. They've been great. Minnesota has on the home court, 20-12 this season. What are you looking at on the DK Sportsbook here? Last 10 games in this matchup have gone over, by the way, and this is head and shoulders biggest total on the board.
Yeah, the Wizards especially seem to be involved in these high total games every single night, and it's kind of hard to go in the opposite direction. I actually have a pair of player props, a pair of unders that I'm looking at tonight. The first of which is Porzingis under 9.5 rebounds. This is if Rudy Gobert plays. He's questionable. I think he will play. But you look at Porzingis' game log, he's gone over this number in 2 of his last 3. So you think, okay, maybe this is close to 50-50. But both of those 2 came against the 2 worst rebounding teams in the league in terms of total rebound percentage. Those are the Blazers and the Indiana Pacers. Other than that, he only has 1 other game in the last 12 where he's gone over 9.5 rebounds. So I like the under there. And I'm also going to take a little chance here on the under on Anthony Edwards made 3-pointers. It's at plus money over at DK. You could get under 2.5 at plus 110. And he's gone under this number in 5 of his last 6 guys. He's shooting 29% from 3 in that span. I think the thought here is maybe he breaks out of it tonight against the Wizards. He's still taking a decent amount of threes. He's just in a slump. He did have a stretch this season where he hit over this number in 8 straight games. So I get that. But at plus money for a guy who's gone under in 5 of the last 6, I'll take that.
Yeah, and maybe you're looking at him on the DFS side tonight. I mean, Bradley Beal could be an option as well, right, Gare Bear?
Yeah, I think this is unsurprisingly the game I would be most aggressive spending up towards the top end talent. You mentioned it, Emerson. This is the biggest total on this very, very small slate, and it's two teams that tend to play at a faster pace and not have such a good defense. Specifically, Minnesota, they have in February the 4th fastest pace in the league, which has led to them allowing the 6th most points per game, up over 121 opponent points per game in that span of time. I like Kyle Kuzma, I think, tonight as my favorite DFS play on Washington's side. This is probably mostly a pricing quirk due to the fact that, again, this is a small 3-game slate, but he is $7,900. It is just the second time in his last 30 games that he has been priced below 8K. I think we're kind of just at a point with Kuzma's scoring ability and his rebounding ability that if he's ever priced below $8,000, he's just someone you almost automatically have to take a look at and put into some lineups for DFS.
I'm more excited for what the hell he's going to be wearing pregame.
Sure.
Kyle Kuzma. Dude, some of the outfits like the last 2 weeks have been absolutely insane, but whatever, man. If you can pull it off, pull it off. Let's go to the third and final game here, dudes. Let's go Suns. Let's go Clippers. Closest game on the board, so 1-point favorite here at home. That's going to be Phoenix. I believe the Suns' first game back since Super Bowl was held there all last week, so they were not at home. Garion, DFS play. Who stands out to you here on DraftKings?
So this is a very top-heavy game. You've obviously got the Suns with their, even without Kevin Durant, 3-headed monster of Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton, even though Devin Booker is still not playing his full allotment of minutes. And then on the Clippers side, you've got Kawhi Leonard, you've got Paul George. I think the value that opened up in this game is sort of the wing position for the Clippers when we found out Norman Powell was going to be unavailable for this contest, just resting the final game before the All-Star break. Eric Gordon should get some extra run because of that, but I think the guy I'm mostly keying in on is Terrence Mann, who's been playing really well the last couple of months, but he's been actually viable in fantasy in 3 of his last 4 games, exceeding 29 DraftKings points in 3 of those contests. Mann should see a bit of a usage rate bump with no Norman Powell. This might even be a game where he's asked to play over 30 minutes, which is not something he necessarily has to do all the time, considering the depth that the Clippers generally have. But I think Powell's absence, again, Bones Highland might get a couple extra minutes. Eric Gordon should get some extra shots. But I think overall, Mann is the safest guy in that sub 5K range to kind of hit your wagon to.
What's the move on the DK Sportsbook here, Waylon? We're talking the 4 and 5 seeds currently in the Western Conference. You got the Clippers just a half game back of these dudes, so they want it.
I think they do. And I think Phoenix does as well. And I actually was really impressed with how the Suns played earlier this week against Sacramento. I kind of thought that was a 50-50 game, and really Phoenix dominated the bulk of that one. And so I do like the Suns at home here. I think the Clippers missing Norman Powell, like Garion said, that's a pretty big deal. I mean, you still think of Norman Powell as a role player, which ultimately is true, but averaging 22 points per game over his last 7, I mean, he is a big deal for that offense. On the total, I don't really have a great lean here. I mean, it's depending on some of the metrics you look into, it kind of swings you one way or the other. I would give a slight lean to the over just because this number is a little bit down at 223.5. But a couple props that I really like. Josh Okogie. I know everybody loves betting Josh Okogie props. I'm going under 11.5 points. He's been over that number the last few games, but we are going to see Terrence Ross debut for the Suns tonight. I think Okogie is going to be the primary victim there minutes-wise to Terrence Ross joining the rotation. And then I try to bet this prop as much as I can. Basically, any night it's available and the Clippers are on the board. Kawhi Leonard over 1.5 blocks and steals. It hit the other night. It's hit in 7 of the last 9. And basically, as long as he is active and plays 30 minutes, you feel really good about that one, regardless of the opponent.
And then Paul George, 20.5 points right now, his total in the DK Sportsbook. He's done well in this matchup, Waylon, scoring over 25 points in each of his last 5 games at the Footprint Center there in Phoenix. So, little fun trend for you. Guys, your time here is done. Very, very easy lift. Both of you did a fantastic job. Coming up after this break, we're going to have a little bit of fun with Jeff and Pierce. NFL Honest Awards. Honest NFL Awards. It's coming up next. We're going to get weird. Stick with us.
You know, betting without a game plan is a little like skating a giant ramp without helmet and pads. I wouldn't risk it. And I wouldn't bet without a game plan. DraftKings Sportsbook provides you with tools to set a realistic budget and time limits, so you're ready to bet responsibly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino apps to learn more about how you can practice safe bets.
This season, DraftKings Sportsbook is your place to bet on the greatest sport on ice. There's so many ways to get closer to the game. And with this latest offer, you can win big. Now that is deserving of some victory stick taps.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, sign up with the promo code, and take advantage of this great offer.
And get in on the action with an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
DraftKings, you did it. I didn't think an NBA game could possibly get any more exciting. DraftKings was like, yo, hold my same game parlay. So I stacked the get off me with a split splash, baby, and finished with, I'm a grown man, Because with DraftKings same game parlays, you can turn that's money into that's money. Get a no-sweat NBA same game parlay up to $10 with DraftKings Sportsbook. Action's so good, why bet anywhere else? I call game.
You want to be a showstopper? You want to be awesome? Then you'll want to have a game plan. Whether you're a champion or a bettor, you gotta be responsible. Have a realistic budget and bet within your means. Set a time limit, then stick to it. And use the DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino apps. They offer all these tools and more so you can practice safe bets. Can I get a mic to drop?
All right, two of my favorites now joining the program, Jeff Ulrich, Pierce Dietrich. Guys, the NFL season is over, but the discussion here on The Sweat is not. Honest NFL Awards. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to hand out fantasy and gambling awards for the NFL season that fans really want to see. And you two have been jonesing to dish out. Like Fantasy Frustrator. Jeff Ulrich, this right now is a player who you love to start, but never did well rather, when he was in your lineup. So who comes to mind when I say that?
Well, for me, I mean, if I'm being dead honest, it's Jalen Waddle. I mean, look, like, great season, right up there in terms of rankings. But, like, if you caught him on the wrong weeks, there was plenty of bust weeks for Jalen Waddle. And, again, it's not even a detriment. I just had him in my lineup at all the wrong points. He did have 5 games where he had no touchdowns and like under 50 yards this year. So there were lots of busts out there on the schedule. If you caught him on the right weeks, you could have probably found someone easily who just said, oh, Jalen Waddle was like my moneymaker here because I caught him on all the weeks when he had over 100 yards and a touchdown. And there were plenty of those weeks. There were actually 4 of those weeks. So, I mean, he put up 30 or more DraftKings points numerous times. He had a ton of upside, which we like for DFS. But for me, super frustrating player because it was always a player who, you know, you could take that discount off of Tyreek Hill. You could get exposure to that upside. But, like, if you caught him on these wrong weeks, I mean, he's just so frustrating. So, for me, the biggest frustrator this week was Jalen Waddle. I mean, wanted a piece of that Miami offense. Good thinking. I just never timed him right.
All right, Pierce, what about you? For me, it was Kyle Pitts, 1,000%. For some reason, I refused to give up on that guy. Kept stuffing him inside the lineup, knowing that Marcus Mariota was only going to throw throw the football 8 times.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts was rough this season, and really his rookie season, there were plenty of games where, you know, he left a lot to be desired. And yeah, this year you probably should have abandoned Pitts pretty early on. But speaking of trying to abandon a player, I just kept hanging with Jerick McKinnon way too long. The guy just embarrassed me throughout the playoffs. It's a really strange season. Really had a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity. You know, with running backs, we usually can count on volume and not necessarily touchdown variance. It was the opposite for McKinnon. He was getting touchdowns every week, sometimes multiple touchdowns, but he couldn't get the volume. His volume absolutely disappeared in the playoffs. And really, the whole Kansas City offense It was very frustrating to watch them, what could have been, what they could do. I mean, obviously, we know Mahomes is amazing. We know Andy Reid is one of the best offensive minds out there. And yet that offense just never could quite reach the potential. You never knew where the points were going to come. Some guy would have a big week. But overall, like, just there's so much left on the table with Kansas City's offense. Maybe next year will be a different story, but ultimately just frustrating other than rostering Kelsey on that team.
Yeah, I thought like down the stretch there though, at least for season long, I thought he was like pretty good. I mean, he had a couple of those games where he was like, he won that one in overtime. It was like his third touchdown of the game. I only know this because Steve Buchanan and I, on a season long league, were co-owners, and like that was one of the biggest pickups for us.
He was pretty good, but there was so much more that he could have done. He needed more of an opportunity. Pacheco was getting plenty of rush attempts. He was getting touchdowns.
Dude, hold on. Like from December 4th on, he scored a freaking touchdown every game, including multiple games with multiple touchdowns. I know, but like, how can that guy be most disappointing? You're talking more in the front half of the season then.
No, I'm talking about look, so if he was finding the end zone and he was making these big plays and they thought they could use him in that manner all throughout the season, the bigger question is like, why don't you use him more? If he has that potential, if he can, be as dynamic as we thought he could be, why wasn't he getting any volume? And he just wasn't. So I'm disappointed that I just thought he could have some monster 20, 25-point games every single week, and they just didn't use him in that role.
Honestly, just about everybody on the Chiefs, other than Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, were like pretty big disappointments for fantasy. Yeah. I mean, all the wide receivers stunk. Lots of people took Juju Smith-Schuster like way up there. I was gambling on Marquez Valdes-Scantling a lot in like best ball. None of those guys worked out. McKinnon was kind of had that hot stretch, but Pierce is right. I mean, from a season-long standpoint, even just from like, in the playoffs, like he was pretty disappointing outside of basically like a 4-week stretch.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess that's why Mahomes is MVP, because he really didn't have a whole lot to work with, yet he had this like record-setting season. Sense. Extremely impressive. Let's go Auto Fade Award. This is a player, Pierce, you just never considered putting on your team, however, would consistently and constantly pull in ownership on DraftKings. What do you think?
CMC, Christian McCaffrey. Look, he's an amazing player, but going to San Francisco, I just always questioned what his role was going to be and what the situations would be from week to week. You look at what McCaffrey was, not necessarily what he's capable of doing or what he could do, but his situation in Carolina was really perfect for garbage fantasy points or even just regular fantasy points over the last couple seasons. They haven't had really good defenses, so Carolina's constantly having to score points, and they really had no one else other than Christian McCaffrey to lean on. Well, San Francisco was never really in those situations. They were able to play strong defense with the best defense in the league. They have multiple weapons. They have a coach that can be very conservative at times. And you just knew that he wasn't going to get used in the role that you absolutely needed in fantasy. Now, there were plenty of weeks where he had monster weeks, but there were also weeks where he didn't live up to his salary. It was tough to completely fade him because he's a great player. But I just always questioned his role, and so I always faded him.
Jeff, what about you, dude?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with Najee Harris for this one. I mean, Harris was a player I pointed out preseason, like really good fade candidate coming off a huge number of carries. And you know what? To his credit, he played in every single game this year. Like even though he had some foot injury issues during the season and before the season, he didn't miss a beat, but he also did go under his total this year. And I mean, you look at Harris, it's really, I don't think it's a player issue with him, but the Steelers were projecting as one of the weakest O-lines in football to start the year. You knew their offense wasn't going to be good with Mitch Trubisky starting the season as quarterback. And this is a team who was always going to be just sort of, try and win some games with defense, maybe get a big player or two downfield. It just was not a good situation for Najee Harris. And I again, just a player I would never think about, but always got some ownership. It's always tempting to get players when you get that much volume. But I mean, again, second year in the league, second year in a row, he's averaged under 4 yards per carry. The explosive plays with Harris just aren't there. So kudos to him for being so consistent, playing in the games. He is getting carries, but like his big game log, you look at his game log, the big games just aren't there. I also saw his receptions get cut into a bit this year. Now, he was pretty good down the stretch. It feels like, next year may actually be a good bounce back / breakout season for Najee Harris if the Steelers can maybe just get this O-line figured out a little bit, get Pickett in there to start the year. But, this year he was just an auto fade for me from the start. And, just was someone I never really thought about. I mean, if you're chasing the volume, that's fine, but I thought he was a great fade all year.
This is another category, even producer Sledge just got Mayor, that you could easily list Kyle Pitts. Like, people just expected him to do something every week. Ended up just playing 10 games and producing 356.
If you just faded Kyle Pitts this year, you probably were profitable because
yes.
I mean, every week,
yes.
people in DFS were just chasing the big Pitts week. If you just pretended he didn't exist, much like kind of I did with Najee Harris, you probably had a good year.
And even like those 2 games where he did score a touchdown, I remember it was like he had just 2 catches for like 20 yards and then that touchdown. So never really had that one big game. But who is someone who did? Give me a player who did, Jeff, a one-game wonder, a player who had one big game but could never repeat it.
Well, I could have used this player for my fantasy frustrator as well because A.J. Dillon had a really nice start to the year. Put up over 20 DK fantasy points, scored a touchdown, had like 5 catches. Oh, the usage was there. He looked great. Oh, he's going to catch like 80 passes this year.
He was like your MVP pick, wasn't he?
No, he wasn't my MVP pick. But I did say this is what I said. I said he had a chance to lead the league in touchdowns.
Okay.
He actually did end up with 7 rushing touchdowns, but a lot of those came in the back half of the year. We went through about 10 games without him finding the end zone as well. And then you saw like his usage in the passing game wasn't consistent. It wasn't a breakout of any kind. It was a frustrating year. I mean, if you chased A.J. Dillon, if you took the value on him in terms of like just like where he was going in the draft, or you thought he was going to have a breakout year with no Devontae Adams there, it was a bust. So he had the one big game to start the year. It was one of his best games of the season, if not his best game of the year. And then from there, it was just mediocre. It was like enough to just suck you in. In a lot of ways, A.J. Dillon was like the Kyle Pitts of the tight end position because he just did enough every week to suck you in. He'd get a few catches here and there, and then he finally started scoring some touchdowns at the end. But even when he scored those touchdowns, he didn't have a single 100-yard rushing game. So there just wasn't much here. I mean, A.J. Dillon, nice player, but still a complimentary role until Aaron Jones goes elsewhere.
All right, what do you think, Pierce? Who is your one-game wonder?
Joe Mixon scored 55 points in a fantasy game. He had 5 touchdowns.
Point.
Al Bundy thinks that's ludicrous. High legend, Al Bundy. Yeah, 5 I mean, we talked about touchdown variance and how Jerick McKinnon found the end zone often more than you would expected him to. Even beyond the 5 touchdown variance in that game, he also had tons of yardage, over 200 yards. That's kind of exceptional for Joe Mixon as well. And you knew that you look at this offense, there's too many weapons. There was no way that Mixon was ever going to be able to live up to that again. Even if they didn't have the weapons that they have, that's just a ridiculous performance. So ultimately, throughout the season, nothing can live up to that. Mixon had a good year. The Bengals had a good year, but 5 touchdowns, 55 fantasy points, over 211 total yards. Yeah, you just can't do that week to week.
Most undervalued player. So your MUVP. Pierce Dietrich, player whose low price never matched his production.
Well, this guy's salary caught up to him at one point, but then he kind of fell off the map with injuries. Justin Fields.
Yes.
We've been hyping Justin Fields for the last 2 seasons. Finally, we started to get it right, and he was definitely too cheap for several weeks, if not a month. Eventually, the league caught on to him, and then just as people were catching on to Justin Fields, he got injured and fell apart, which is actually kind of interesting because we could go into next season and people are going to be, sleeping on Justin Fields again. Maybe we'll get some cheap pricing on him, but what he showed with his legs as his game develops through the air, he still doesn't have any receivers or really any offensive line around him, but he was still able to put up massive numbers. Just like what we saw from him as a rushing quarterback, we haven't seen from a lot of quarterbacks in a while, and they never quite got his price right. So hopefully at the beginning of next season, we'll see kind of a similar situation unfold.
I mean, through the first 5 games, you're absolutely right. Like, he was struggling mightily. He was not worth paying for on DraftKings.
They wouldn't turn him loose.
Yeah,
That's what happened. They turned him loose, and his price, it took a while to correct. It took a while for the public to get on to what they were getting ready to do. But if you saw some of those early signs, then you really cashed in for about 2 or 3 weeks.
I mean, you're damn right, because after like week 5 on, the switch flipped. They cut him loose. They let him loose, Pierce. I mean, the dude ended up rushing for more than 1,000 yards this season. That's insane production from a quarterback. Yeah, Jeff, what do you think, dude?
I'm going to go to wide receiver, a player who just, was perennially underpriced most of the season. I mean, you could get him in the mid-range, whereas most of the elite wide receivers were going over 6,500, 7K. Amari Cooper. I mean, Cooper had 6 games with 75 yards and a touchdown. A lot of those games came with the 100-yard bonus. He had 5 of them. So, I mean, you look at where like the end of season rankings are for wide receiver, especially in PPR. He finished 8th. He finished just behind CeeDee Lamb. He finished in front of Amon-Ra St. Brown, in front of Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin. I mean, these are wide receivers who everybody loves to talk about. No one loves to talk about Amari Cooper, but I mean, what a value if you just kept on him. Most weeks you could just fit him in as a wide receiver 2. Nobody expected the Cleveland offense to be producing a true wide receiver 1, but I mean, Cooper, 9 touchdowns on the season. He produced with 2 different quarterbacks. He produced with Jacoby Brissett. I mean, what a great value if you just went on him. And the thing about Cooper, again, under-owned. Like, there was no point where people were like, oh, yeah, we got to get Amari Cooper in our lineup, even after he put up these big games. So, I mean, if you just kept using him, just kept using the value that was there, some great weeks from Amari Cooper, especially in larger fields. He really stuck out to me, putting up a top 10 season in terms of fantasy production in that offense. Really impressive. I know we talked about like breakout candidates as well. Christian Watson was underpriced for a large portion of the season as well after his breakout. So kind of like Fields, took a while for the prices to catch up with Watson. He's going to be a really interesting player next year, depending on who's starting at quarterback for Green Bay. But for me, the award here goes to Amari Cooper, who just was consistent all year, underpriced all year. Really, really good DFS play most of the season.
And Christian Watson telling us on Radio Row last week he will not be joining Aaron Rodgers on his darkness retreat. Let's go quick on this last one, dude. Moneymaker, player who won you the most money betting on this season. Jeff Ulrich.
I'm just going to go, it's pretty simple. Tyler Algier was getting a bigger share of the carries towards the end in Atlanta. We already talked about this. Atlanta just, you knew they were going to run the ball. So once Algier was getting bigger carries, his props would just look too low. You bet the alt lines, he got a couple nice 100-yard games in there at the end. Algier was just a moneymaker to the over towards the end of the season.
Pierce Dietrich, who made you the most money? What? There you go.
Your boys, Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah! Hell yeah!
For the last 10 games. The public didn't believe in them. The sportsbook didn't believe in them. Gave them points every single week. Not only did they cover, but they were winning straight up.
All right, love you guys. Also going to love having you talk some XFL with us this season, because I know everyone right now are kind of, hey, you got any more of that pigskin? Yeah, we do. XFL kicking off this weekend. Don't sweat it, people. Don't sweat football being gone, because it's not technically gone. This weekend on DraftKings, let's go. You can draft, you can bet all over DraftKings Sportsbook for the XFL. This weekend's action, opening weekend. Plus, we got DFS contests available to join in the lobby. Right meow. 4-game slate here. 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. Got a kickoff special with a $300,000 prize pool, $100K to first place. Go check it out right meow. When we come back, we're going to help you make some money around the EPL with best bets. Let's poke over to soccer across the pond. EPL, Chinmay Vaidya, AJ Schultz. What's up, you two handsome potato chips? Match week 24. We skipped last week, right? Because of the Super Bowl, but we're back for picks. You two dishing them out. Chinmay, your Arsenal club played on Wednesday. Did they win or lose?
They did not win, I can tell you that.
Okay.
But in the grand scheme of things, I'm seeing a lot of Arsenal fans who are down about the match, and I was too. It was a disappointing result. They didn't play well in a big game, but if you had told me at the beginning of the season that in mid-February, Arsenal would be tied with Manchester City on points at the top of the league table with a game in hand and a return game in Manchester in 2 months' time, I would have taken that every single time. So I think while the match was a disappointing result, everything is still in front of this Arsenal team, and this is where you find out if you have that championship medal. This is where you find out what champions are made of. So everything's still in front of these guys, and I expect them to eventually clean things up at the back line.
Okay.
I think City got a few lucky goals yesterday, and if a few bounces go the other way, it could have been a different story. So we'll get them on the return game, and we have a game in hand. So bring it on. This is a championship chase, and everything's still in front of Arsenal here.
All right, bring on your best bet then for their match on Saturday.
I think we're starting to see that the Gabriel Jesus injury is playing a bigger factor than people have realized, at least in the new year. They were able to adjust a few games without him, but now him being out is being a bit of a concern. I think he's going to come back within a week or two, hopefully. I would still take Arsenal on the money line at -120, but I can understand going for Aston Villa, draw no bet at +220. I can see why someone like AJ would take that line. The Arsenal back line has not been good. They've had some really bad judgment calls defensively. At least man marking on set pieces has not been good. So I can see Aston Villa scoring a goal on a set piece to potentially grab a draw here. I can see the value in draw no bet, but I'll still take the Gunners on the money line.
What do you like in this game here on Saturday, AJ?
Well, what I like is Chinmay's audition to be like the media point person for Arsenal right now.
He sounds like me talking about.
there.
He sounds like me talking about the Jaguars crying out loud. A lot of we's and me's and us.
The fact of the matter is, they lost to Everton, and not a lot of people have lost to Everton this year. As much as it pains me to say that, so things are not going well for them. Ultimately, though, I do have to agree with Chinmay. I think this is a bounce back opportunity here. I would also take the Gunners on the money line. It's -120. That's some of the best value you're probably going to have gotten on Arsenal over the last several weeks on the money line to begin with. So I think you take the value when it's there. I do expect they can bounce back against Aston Villa later.
All right, AJ, talk to me here about Man City taking on Nottingham Forest. -310 favorite. Now -320 favorite on the DK Sportsbook. And you got Manchester United as a -170 favorite. Okay, so any bets you like in these two matches here? We're talking a couple teams near the top of the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think as always, the goal is to get some value out of City here. I think you do that with the spread. You can get City -1.5 comes in at -120. I do like both teams to score in this one. It comes in at +100. This isn't a Forest team that I expect to win, but they've got some decent attacking options. Should be able to get one here, maybe a 3-1, 4-1 win for City. And then on the other matchup, Foxes are coming off a huge win against Spurs, and they've got 8 goals in their last 2 games here, plus 450 on the money line, or even if you want to go +320, the draw no bet. I think Leicester City are really good value this weekend.
Yeah, and Chinmay, too, I've read that Man City actually might rest a few players because of next week's Champions League match. Is that true?
There's always a possibility, but City have the depth to be able to do that.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry too much from a talent standpoint. I don't think this line will move a lot. Obviously, the big question mark will be Haaland. How much does he play? That's probably going to move the line the most, if anything at all. But I'm going, on the Leicester side with Man United. I think Leicester double chance at +135 is really solid. Leicester have been putting goals in the back of the net recently. Over 3.5 total goals for that match comes in at +145. I think that's a really strong spot as well, given that United have been scoring goals and Leicester are just coming off, 2 games where they've scored four goals in each match. So I think the over on 3.5 at plus money is really good there. And Leicester double chance if you're back in the Foxes in some form right now.
Chinmay, over on the DFS side, which players catch your eye for this weekend slate?
James Madison for Leicester has been really good over the past few matches. And I think he's sort of that creator that they have in midfield who also gets up and delivers you some chances to score. So obviously Madison is my play. Haaland is very tough to ignore if he does suit up. It's a favorable matchup. He's consistently scored goals. He's always been involved in attacking play. Marcus Rashford is another player who is starting to click a little bit. And then if you're going with Arsenal in a bounce back situation, I think Martin Odegaard has still been, even though this run of form has not been good, Martin Odegaard has still been the one who's been the most creative, who's been giving them the most success in that final third. He'll probably be the one who's involved in any goals. So Odegaard would be sort of a lower end filler play for me if you can't get Madison or Rashford.
All right, who do you like? Who do you got atop your EPL DFS rankings, AJ, for this weekend?
Well, depending on how the lineup shakes out, if Haaland doesn't play, we could see Jack Grealish in a more forward position here. I think that would definitely be an option. Julian Alvarez is another play there. I think I would fade Haaland if he does start, not because I don't think he'll score, but his price tag will probably be pretty astronomical here. I think instead you could look maybe at getting some Chelsea players in here. They have the second best odds to win on Saturday. The implied goal total for that team sits at an even 2. I would look maybe Kai Havertz. He's got just 1 goal in his last 5, but 15 shots over that stretch, 6 chances created. He's going to be involved in the offense in what could be a pretty one-sided matchup for Chelsea.
All right, gentlemen, first time we've had you two together in quite some time for our EPL segment. And friendly reminder, how we wrap this baby up. Sweaty boot time, baby. Chinmay. Last pick of Arsenal. Ooh, over Everton, that did not hit. AJ, you were smart to not show up because by not showing up and not giving a bet, you were able to gain some ground. I don't even know who's in the lead here. Both of you have been terrible at your sweaty boot picks this year, but you've been AJ's winning 4-3. Okay, great. Good for you. Anywho, you guys have been fantastic with every other pick you dish out except this. So maybe everybody do the complete opposite of what they recommend now for the sweaty boot pick. Let's go, AJ. You're in the lead. Give me your sweaty boot pick.
Yeah, I'm going to go with my boys in blue here for my long-awaited return to the sweaty boot. Everton on the money line against Leeds. It's a battle of bottom feeders here, but there have been some signs in improvement for the Toffees under new manager Sean Dyche. While Leeds haven't won in the Premier League since November 5th against Bournemouth, that's a stretch of 9 matches in which they either draw or fall. So I'm going to go with Everton on the money line to take home the victory in this crucial relegation battle.
Chinmay, this is the biggest EPL pick of your life, okay?
I don't think that's the case. I appreciate you. I appreciate you selling it up and hyping it up as much as you can. I'm going a little more up the table in the 5, 6, or I believe 6, 7 spots, something like that, in the final Europa League spots. Fulham and Brighton are tied on points right now. I think this line is a little bit out of whack, but I'm going Fulham double chance against Brighton. Comes in at plus 125. Fulham did beat Brighton last time out, way back when the Premier League first started. So obviously a little bit different teams right now in different form at the moment, but I think Fulham has a really good chance to either win or at least pull out the draw here. Give me Fulham double chance against Brighton this weekend.
Gentlemen, great catching up with both of you as always. Looking forward to next week and seeing if, AJ can grow his lead in the race for the sweaty boot. Chinmay can close the gap. We're going to talk some NHL next. Winnipeg Jets here, folks, are on a roll. Winners of 3 straight games. Are they the team to target for your fantasy lineups this evening? We're going to check in with Paul Bruno and Pete Jensen on the other side of this very quick break. 8-game slate around the NHL tonight. Let's help you build a money-making lineup, shall we? And by we, if I said the word we got Paul Bruno here of RotoWire. We have Pete Jensen of NHL.com. A little morning skate action. We'll start at the dot, dudes. Jets visiting the Blue Jackets. I bring this up because you have the Jets riding a 3-game win streak right now. Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, solid options up the middle. Who are you going to roster at center, Pete?
I'm looking more in the middle range. Michael Backlund for the Calgary Flames. I don't think most people realize how deep the Flames offense is this season. And the big reason for that is because their offseason acquisitions like Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar have not turned out anywhere near what everybody expected. But Backlund has 10 points in his past 10 games, playing on a third line with Blake Coleman and Andrew Mangiapane, 2 goal scorers. So I like Backlund, and the high shot volume he's had in recent weeks as well is super underrated. So start cheap. I also like Matty Beniers. Hasn't had a point in 5 games since coming back from injury, but is still the Calder Trophy frontrunner. So you could have your middle range centers and then go to bat with some more expensive players at other positions.
All right, what do you think here, Paul? I mean, Sebastian Aho could be a good choice. 6-game goal streak was just snapped a couple games ago. Guy was on fire.
Before I answer that, I'm going to tell you to start playing Ted DiBiase's Money, Money, Money music when I come on, because I'm doing it this year.
Dude, Paul, thank you. Thank you, man. My dogs can eat because of you.
And so I'll start this segment by saying $5,900 to $77,000, the range where you can get some good value. Mark Scheifele, you said, is on fire. How about 6 goals, 2 helpers in his last 8 games, all for $6,000 against the lowly Columbus Blue Jackets? I think that's a great call, but almost better than that. Patrice Bergeron, $5,900. If you can imagine the Bruins' top line center, he has a big edge over the Pred centers tonight, and so I like that a lot. Then you go with a little bit higher to some of the big boys. Aho, $6,900 against Montreal. He was on a scoring tear before he was blanked in the last 2. I say he starts another streak tonight.
What's the move at wing, Paul?
Kyle Connor is sticking to the Winnipeg theme. Big skill edge for the visitors, and I think he's going to be all over the score sheet tonight. $8,100 the price tag there. If you want to save a little bit of money, lots of great options. Again, the Boston big line being disrespected tonight. $5,900 for Brad Marchand. Haven't seen a price tag that low on him all season long, I don't think. And then Jesper Bratt, you might have thought he might have suffered with the injury to his regular center, but he's thriving just fine right now, playing with Nick Heecher. 3 goals, 4 helpers in his last 7 games played. And then finally, Andrei Svechnikov, $6,400 against Montreal. Look, he's had trouble finding the net, but 20 shots on goal in his last 6 games. He's got 6 assists in that stretch. He's overdue for a score, and you'll get no better chance than tonight against the Habs.
Pete, there's a dude like Timo Meier who obviously has been rumored, been part of trade rumors all season long, but just put up 7 shots and a goal against Pittsburgh on Tuesday. I mean, that same neck of the woods. Matt Tkachuk, his first season in Florida has been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I was looking at Tkachuk. He's up to 75 points, and we're only just past the halfway mark of the season. So pretty incredible, especially when you consider what I said earlier. Huberdeau has been a fantasy bust, and Tkachuk on the other side is better than ever. It looks like he's going to have another 100-point season in his sleep this season. Yeah, for Timo Meier, always the high floor. Really excited to see where he might land before the deadline hits, and he could put a contender over the top without a doubt. And then in order to make room, if you want to roster those 2 guys, I was looking at Robbie Fabry for the Detroit Red Wings. I mean, the Red Wings all of a sudden are back in playoff contention. They're in line with the Buffalo Sabres points-wise, and Robbie Fabry, big reason to do with it. He's got 6 points in his past 3 games with 4 coming on the power play. He's playing on the first unit, so a lot of good trends to keep an eye on there.
I mean, as we go back to the blue line here, it's tough to ignore, Pete, it's tough to ignore Brent Burns. $6,600 against Montreal tonight. This is a guy who has 9 points in his last 9 games. So would you pay that price tag for this dude, or who else are you looking at back there on the blue line?
I mean, one of the safest teams right now is Carolina, and Burns, even when they tinker with their first unit, I see, they put Brady Shea up there a little bit from time to time. Burns continues to churn out the points. Also really like the price point, even better on Josh Morrissey, only $6,200. I mean, this guy is a Norris Trophy contender, better than a point per game this season as a defenseman with 56 and 54 games. that is honestly astonishing that he's been able to do this. And all those good things you were saying about Winnipeg's forward group, it's his spot on the first power play. So he's just rocking and rolling all season long. He's been able to sustain his hot start. And I think he deserves a little bit more Norris Trophy love than he's currently getting.
I mean, Paul, listen, if you're going to go near the top of the board, Erik Karlsson having a season for the ages, 18 goals, 55 apples in just 55 games. Dude is on pace for 109 freaking points, which would be the 10th best season by a blue liner in NHL history, dude.
He's on my hot list for tonight. If you can fit him in, that's a great call, Emerson. And even if you can't fit him in, you can save some money and still get some high-end defensemen who are priced lower and make a lot of sense. Charlie McAvoy, $5,800 versus Nashville. This is the power play quarterback for the Bruins. He plays a lot of regular shifts with the top 6 forwards as well. So that is a good value for me too. Vince Dunn, underrated by some people in Seattle, quietly reached the 40-point mark in 54 games already this year. Makes good sense to me. Also featured on their power play against Philadelphia. And then Brady Shea, like our friend Pete said, makes good sense too. $4,400 against Montreal for a guy who's got a team leading 10 goals from the back end. I like that as well.
All right, guys, just looking at the 8-game slate overall, find us a winner. Which team takes home a victory tonight, Paul?
There's a whole host of good picks on the puck line for me tonight. Winnipeg plus 130 over Columbus. Yes, please. Boston plus 135 over Nashville. Ditto. Vegas against San Jose plus 130, also another good bet. So three solid looks on the puck line for me really highlight the opportunities here tonight.
Pete, who's in a good spot, take home that dub tonight, baby?
I like the Seattle Kraken, like I was mentioning earlier with Beniers. He's due for a bounce back after a slow start since returning. I just think that Seattle's so much deeper of a team than Philly this year. And Seattle, maybe you can get a little better value on them compared to earlier in the season where they were just opening everybody's eyes. Now they've lost 4 out of 5, including a shootout loss to the Jets, but they were competitive. They just beat Philly 2 games ago, so they get a rematch at home. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a lopsided result in Seattle's favor here.
All right, guys, as the NHL is getting its second half underway, the NBA will be doing the same here following the All-Star break, which arrives tomorrow. We'll give you a NBA first half betting recap. Jeff Pratt, DK contributor, joins us right after this break. All right, as promised, let's deliver you a first half of the NBA season betting recap. Jeff Pratt, DK contributor, is here. You're all smiles, man. Joe Mazzulla no longer interim. The head coach of the Celtics, congratulations. I mean, there was no other move to make if you were the C's. It's about damn time, right?
Absolutely. I mean, very well deserved. I think he helped turn a very unfortunate situation into a great situation in Boston. The guys love him. And, 42-17 heading into the All-Star break, he's going to be one of the coaches there. I believe he was the first interim to coach an All-Star team. Now, obviously, he won't be, but just well-deserved.
Yeah.
We're very happy.
Hell of a first half by the Celtics, but nobody was better in the first half against the spread than the OKC Thunder, covering 61.8% of the time. How much are we undervaluing this team? And then part 2 of that question, will they continue this hot streak against the spread in the second half?
People are absolutely undervaluing OKC. I mean, if you just look at the standings, they're in 10th right now in the West, but that conference is so tight that they're only one game out of a playoff spot. And everything about the Thunder has impressed me this year, from an on-court standpoint to a front office perspective. You know, Sam Presti has done an incredible job building this roster and accumulating draft picks while also maintaining cap flexibility. In my opinion, he's the most underrated GM in the league by a considerable margin, and he's definitely shown that this year. And then on the court, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been a revelation for the Thunder this year. He was already great, but he just hit another gear this season. They've got a lot of good young pieces around him. They're well coached. They're disciplined on both ends of the floor. And what's interesting is, despite having a losing record, the Thunder actually have a positive average point differential. They rank 10th in the league in that regard, which explains why they're so effective at covering. And as long as teams continue to play them tight, but the Thunder don't actually win a lot of games, they should continue to cover at a high rate. So there's no reason to expect them to dip off in the second half of the season. If anything, I think they're going to keep making a push with the playoffs now actually in their sights.
All right, from the best team against the spread to the best team to hitting the over this season, that's the Warriors. Their games are going over the points total on DK Sportsbook 62.5% of the time. What makes their games so damn high scoring, Jeff?
I mean, the reasoning there is pretty straightforward. They score the second most points per game, and they rank first in the league in pace.
Yep.
So the logic just lines up there. And
So
now, in terms of whether
I was going to say, is this a trend that you're going to count on continuing in the second half then?
I'm not certain. There are a couple of ways that you can look at it. On one hand, obviously injuries are a pretty big concern. Steph Curry has shown that he can't stay healthy consistently in the regular season. Klay Thompson obviously has an extensive injury history. Not only do these guys get hurt, but they're also older. So we could see them rest more down the stretch, even if they're technically healthy, if the Warriors are in a position that allows them to rest those guys. But on the other hand, Curry's been out for a while now. He's already been out for an extended period of time, and they're still scoring a ton of points. So maybe it's more about the system that Steve Kerr has implemented than the players to a certain extent. Obviously, you can't discount Steph Curry and what he's done, but the system that Kerr has put into place has allowed other guys to step into roles like Jordan Poole and still produce at a really high level. So I would expect them to continue to hit the over at a high rate. There will probably be a slight dip there. I'd say it's more realistic they finish as the 4th or 5th best team in the league at doing it compared to being the first, especially if these guys continue to stay hurt.
What's another trend you notice in the first half people should be aware of?
I don't have anything major that people should be aware of, but one thing that did pique my interest while doing some research was finding out that the worst team against the spread so far this year is the Dallas Mavericks. And a couple of months ago, I came into the studio, went on a rant about how the Mavericks have the worst offensive system in the league, how Jason Kidd has been horrible in that regard. And I personally feel vindicated seeing the stats back that up. It will be very interesting to see if that keeps happening with Kyrie Irving now in the equation, but it's worth noting that Dallas has failed to cover in both games with Kyrie and Luka playing together so far this year. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on down the stretch.
Yo, time to bet the Suns was when they were at plus 1,200 to win the NBA title. None of us could have predicted Kevin Durant going there, though. They're now at plus 425 to win the NBA title. Should make his debut after the All-Star break there in Phoenix. When's the right time to bet the Suns? And why is it right now? Because plus 425 is the best number you're probably going to get the rest of the way.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. If you're confident in the Suns, now is probably the time to bet them because, as you said, I doubt we'll get them at a much lower number unless they lose their first couple games out of the All-Star break, which is always a possibility. But just looking at the Western Conference, we've seen Denver at their best. There's nowhere to go but down for them. And similar point to the Grizzlies, although I do think there's another gear they can hit, but I'm not certain that they'll get there this season. Meanwhile, realistically, the Suns will only continue to round into form as KD gets used to the system. The guys who are already there get used to playing with him. So if you're determined to bet on Phoenix, I think you're getting a good number now. There's a chance they drop their first couple games with those guys not used to playing with each other out of the All-Star break. Might get a slightly better number, but right now is the safe play, as you said, Emerson.
All right, dude, we'll get you out of here with this. Cavs' most popular bet on the spread so far this season on the DraftKings Sportsbook. So top 5 covering team doing so 56.1% of the time. What makes the Cavs so popular on the spread, in your opinion?
The Cavs are an interesting team. I think it's a combination of them outperforming preseason expectations and the versatility on their roster. Because heading into the year, no one really expected Cleveland to be a true contender. But watching them play, even early on, it was clear that this team was really, really good. And I think what makes them an enticing bet on a night-to-night basis is how well they match up with virtually every team. You know, just looking at their roster, the offensive abilities of their backcourt of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, that makes them a matchup nightmare for almost every team on that end of the floor. And then on defense, the duo of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley makes them not only capable of containing elite big men like a Joel Embiid, like a Giannis Antetokounmpo, but really capable of defending anyone because those guys are so agile and competent when being switched onto smaller defenders or smaller attackers. So no matter who the Cavs play, there's typically at least one part of their lineup where you can find an advantage, which I think makes them really enticing.
Jeff, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and we really appreciate you helping us out with the first half betting recap of the NBA season. Should be a fun all-star break there out in Salt Lake City. That's a show, everybody. The slate tonight, 5 o'clock, and then we'll see you back here for a 11 a.m. Eastern Time edition, Friday edition of The Sweat. We'll see you tomorrow.